Soylent Green is not a movie, it was a prophecy. Now sure, we're not quite at the point of cannibalism, though bugs may be on the menu. The elites haven't yet built an Elysium outside of New Zealand, and we're not quite packed like sardines. Yet. Still, the reality is that even though Soylent Green shows a terrible dystopian future, it's actually an exaggerated metaphor for exactly the world we live in today. More than that, it was a prophecy, because if considered a metaphor, you can see in the movie today's climate change, economic disparity, and a barrage of societal inadequacies that we're experiencing today blaring right at you. How could the producers have been so accurate? Did they have DeLorean to spoiler alert our future? Despite being written half a century ago, the movie took place in 2022, and what it got right is more than meets the eye. Look at the world around you: global warming, inequality, billionaire bust-ups, food shortages, war, and technological change that's moving faster than ever before. So what does this cult classic really tell us about the future, our present, and what are the prophecies that we can say have come true? Well, to grasp what the producers were grappling with, we need to consider their context. When Soylent Green hit theaters back in 1973, it stirred up a real mixed bag of reactions from critics. The New York Times, for instance, leaned into how the film pulled off melodrama better than it played the prophet, suggesting it didn't quite nail the chilling idea of humanity just trashing the planet. Meanwhile, Gene Siskel couldn't hold back his amusement, calling it downright absurd. He even kicked. Wait till you see the giant snow shovel police used to round up rowdies. You may never stop laughing, as if it was more comedy than cautionary tale. Over at The New Yorker, they piled on, dismissing it as a pompously prophetic thing of a film, with barely a brain in its beanbag wondering out loud where democracy, the popular vote, women's lib, and the uprising of the poor had wandered off in this dystopian mess. Still, the New York Times wasn't entirely ready to write it off, admitting in the same breath that the movie's vision of 21st century New York could occasionally send a shiver down your spine, even if it rarely felt convincingly real. And then there's Rotten Tomatoes, which later chimed in, noting that while Soylent Green might stumble with melodrama and uneven patches, it ultimately pulls through with a dark, plausible peek into a dystopian future that sticks with you. So what the flick? What was going on in the mind of Edward G. Robinson when he produced this film? Well, for one thing, growing up since 10 years of age in Lower East Side of New York at the turn of the 20th century and pre-Great Depression, he practically experienced a neighborhood deprived of natural surroundings coupled with sheer claustrophobia. Although he clambered out of the Lower East Side, making it to sunny Hollywood, LA, for Edward G. Robinson, it must have been tough for him to see New York City during his days in shambles and in a worse state than when he left to LA right before the Great Depression. During the 1970s, many parts of New York City's landscape were referred to as ghettos. The original word itself describes the incarceration camps of World War II that detained the Jewish population in Germany. However, by the 1970s, the word evolved to describe instead the marginalized living areas and neighborhoods that were excluded from social, economic, political opportunities and power that were common in urban cities worldwide. It was difficult to brush under the rug this manifestation and data from the Kerner Commission report in 1968, which presented that there were roughly hundreds of ghettos in the US alone where people were roughing it and making ends meet, while more affluent groups lived drastically different, and the numbers were more like in the thousands on a global scale. One thing's for sure, parallel and drastic lifestyles were prevalent, where the majority lived on the fringe of existence. Similarly, in the film, Robinson plays the old man who sees that living in a world like Soylent Green is futile. So in the end of the film, instead of persevering and surviving like most marginalized societies did, he opted to euthanize himself at a legalized center that aided him by viewing images in a room full of orchestral, majestic music while scenes of epic nature are played out on IMAX level screens. Eerily, Soylent Green also was Robinson's last production. Was he trying to send a personal message based on his lived experience and seeing the current state of his hometown? Look, in physics, the law of entropy basically says that everything breaks down eventually, if left unchecked. Of course, we're not literally eating people, and yes, of course, we're not literally treating people like furniture in the movie, but we do have factories in China with suicide nets on roofs to prevent child workers from jumping off buildings, while mines in the Congo employ children to perform death-defying tasks to acquire rare minerals our cell phones and technologies are powered by. We do live in a world with increasing tension between sexes that objectifies people through music videos, while its social media echoes no sanctity for the human body. There are plenty of videos on YouTube that dive into this matter. However, I would like to talk about other ways Soylent Green was actually prophetic. Still don't believe Soylent Green is alive and well today? One of the major problems in this cult classic is that a handful of rich folks live in fancy apartments with all the food they want, while everyone else is crammed into sweaty, crumbling cities fighting over crumbs. Sounds extreme? Well, let's look at today. According to the World Inequality Report, the top 1% have seen their share of global wealth dramatically. Looking at this graph, it's like the rich are playing Monopoly with real money, while the rest of us are still looking for free parking. The gap between the super rich and the rest of us isn't sci-fi, it's real and it's wild. But here's the twist. Could our obsession with the wealthy actually be making it worse? Not the main reason, but definitely not helping. Consider this. In the movie, the rich are untouchable big shots with power and privilege. Today, the wealth gap is just as crazy. For example, the top 10% of the people in the US own 2/3 of all the money, while the bottom half the country, scrapes by with less than 3%. That's from the Federal Reserve, and it's not far off from Soylent Green's dystopia. The ultra rich, like billionaires we all know, keep stacking cash. Think 6 trillion richer during the pandemic, while most folks' paychecks barely budged. Now, here's where it gets interesting. In the film, no one's fawning over the elite, they're just there, lording over everyone. But today, we kinda love the rich. Scroll through YouTube or X and you'll see people hyping up billionaires. Wow, they're geniuses. A poll from YouGov says almost half of us admire these mega wealthy types for their success, quote unquote. We watch their rocket launches, binge shows about their lives, and double tap their flashy posts. It's like they're rock stars. Does that adoration screw us? Not directly. It's not why the gap's so huge. The real culprits are boring stuff like tax breaks for the rich and wages that haven't moved since the 80s for regular people. But here's the kicker. When we put the wealthy on a pedestal, we're less likely to call foul. Think about it. How often do you hear, work hard, you can be them, instead of, hey, maybe they shouldn't have all that pie? That dreamy vibe might keep us from pushing back, letting the gap grow wider. So, Soylent Green nailed the wealth divide, elite versus everyone else. Today, we've got the same split, plus a fan club for the rich that's not fixing anything. It's not the whole story, but it's a hot take worth chewing on. Are we accidentally cheering for our own dystopia? What do you think? Does our billionaire hype train make us part of the problem? In Soylent Green, the planet's trashed. The air's a sweaty oven and people are living too close for comfort. The heat's so bad you can feel it through the screen. Crops dying, oceans boiling, society crumbling. Now look around today. Our world's not there yet, but our lifestyles, they're pushing us closer. We're living like the planet's a giant landfill and the temps creeping up fast. In fact, the Earth's hot, like Godzilla breath. And today, we're not far off. Taking a look at NASA's data on rising temperatures is like the Earth saying, can we chill the beep out please? Global temps have jumped about 2 degrees Fahrenheit since the late 1800s, with the last 40 years spiking hard. Thinking 0.26 degrees Celsius in 1980 to nearly 1 degree Celsius by 2020. And although this might not be a big deal to the human body, but we're talking about a planet here. We're driving gas guzzlers, cranking ACs, and tossing out half our food like it's nothing. The United Nations pegs our lifestyles, how we live, eat, and shop, at a big chunk of greenhouse gas emissions. Private households alone pump out tons of CO2, just keeping the lights on and the fridge stocked. Let's take food waste. We chuck about 1.3 billion tons a year globally, says the UN. That's approximately 100 blue whales a year. And that rotting mess in landfills spews methane, a gas that's 25 times worse than CO2 for heating things up. And our cars? In the US alone, transportation's 29% of emissions per the EPA. And most of us are still rolling solo with two-wheel motion on fossil fuel burners. Then there's fast fashion, buying cheap shirts we wear only twice. The fashion industry's carbon footprint is bigger than international flights and shipping combined, hitting 10% of global emissions. We're living fast, not green, and it's turning up the thermostat. The National Oceanic and
Atmospheric Administration, yes, that's a place, says that the last 19 of the 20 hottest years have hit since 2001. Coincidence? Nah. It's us, living like resources are infinite. Yes, we're not the only reason. Big industries and old school energy policies are the heavy hitters, but our don't care vibe? It's fanning the flames. Next time you're sweating through a heat wave or scrolling X about wildfires, think, are we cooking ourselves into a Soylent Green sequel?
So here's the flip side. You're not stuck. You can tweak this. Little moves that add up, whether you're 18 or 50. Let's roll through some. First, cut the waste. That half-eaten burger, freeze it, eat it later. Plan your groceries so you're not tossing veggies. Less trash, less methane, boom! No pun intended. Second, rethink the ride. Carpool with a buddy, hop a bus, or if you're close, bike it. Even one less drive a week dents those emissions. Third, dish fast fashion. Hit a thrift store or rock what you got longer. Your wallet and the planet win. And fourth, spread the word. Post about a heat wave or illegal dumping of chemicals on X. Tag your crew and say, yo, we can fix this. People listen when you talk. Soylent Green showed a world fried by neglect. Today's warming up and our habits aren't innocent, but you've got power. Waste less, ride smarter, shop slow, and shout it out. You're not just watching the heat rise, you're turning it down. As far as economic inequality, you're not powerless in this story either. First, rethink the hype. Next time you're tempted to stand a billionaire's private jet life, ask, what's this guy actually doing for the world? You don't have to hate them, just don't blindly cheer. Share that with your crew, online or in reality. It's small, but it shifts the vibe from worship to prove it. Second, support what's local. The rich get richer off mega corporations, but your dollar can holler. Buy from a small business, a farmer's market, or a local creator instead of big brands sometimes. It keeps cash in your community, not their penthouses. Even if you're broke, spread the word. Hype the little guy. Third, speak up. You don't need a PhD to call out unfairness. Post about it. Talk about it. Why should the top dogs get all the tax breaks while your rent's insane? Politicians notice when enough of us make noise. Look at movements like Fight for $15. Regular people, 20s to 40s, got wages up in places because they wouldn't shut up. And last, build your own path. You don't have to dream of being a billionaire to win. Learn a skill, coding, fixing stuff, anything, and trade it with friends or sell it local. 25-year-old fixing bikes or a 45-year-old baking for neighbors can dodge the corporate grind that feeds the gap. It's not overnight riches, but it's yours. Soylent Green showed a world where the rich run everything. Today's close, and our adoration doesn't help, but you've got moves. Question the hype, back the small fry, raise your voice, and carve your own lane. You're not just stuck watching the gap grow, you can nudge it the other way. So sure, we're not being scooped up by dump trucks for wafer duty. But this quirky 70s cult flick still gets more chuckles for its misses than nods for its hits. Yet, like any good prophecy, Soylent Green has roots in truth, creeping closer to reality than we might care to admit. Next time you're picking a classic to watch, give it a spin. Don't just laugh at what fumbled. Ask yourself, what did it nail? Thanks for joining me on this quirky journey. Make sure you dropkick that like button along with your thoughts and suggestions for the generations below. And don't forget to subscribe. And see you on the next What the Flick?